A scene that once thrived is fading from cultural view. Sydney's drag kings. Who are they and where have they gone? A drag king is a female performance artist who dresses in masculine drag and personifies male gender stereotypes.
In the late 90s, when it first hit the scene, it was massive, every woman and her dog was doing it, and every kind of girl night, queer event that was on, there was always a presence of a drag queen and a drag king doing some type of performance or production show. And now it's really kind of rare.
Joan Dandy, or Javante Swing as she goes by on stage, has witnessed the shift in the scene firsthand, as she has been doing drag king performances since the 90s. So if it's true that every queen needs a king, then why is Sydney's drag king culture in decline? With platforms like Mardi Gras becoming more popular through both homosexual and heterosexual spectators, drag kings continue to fly under the radar. Karen Drysdale, a gender and cultural studies scholar, examined Sydney's local drag king culture and wanted to archive a scene that was fading from cultural view.
I was interested in studying Sydney's drag king scene because first and foremost I was a fan. I was a huge participant. I used to go along every Wednesday night to the Sly Fox Hotel, to Queer Central, and stand there in the audience with all the other drunken women roaring their approval for the drag king on stage. But one of the things that really troubled me is that, like a lot of social scenes, especially for lesbian and queer women, is that there was no archival evidence that this had existed.
Karen believes that drag queens are more accessible to a wider audience as opposed to drag kings.
There's also a lot more sort of flamboyancy, I think, with drag queen appropriations of femininity. So they appeal to a much more mainstream audience because there's more of something to grab onto with that notion about what you're watching there is a sort of an overstated form of femininity. Drag kings arguably need to perform masculinity in much different ways because masculinity tends not to have been as performative as femininity is thought to have been.
Some people argue that drag is becoming inappropriate with the increase of people in the transgender and gender fluid community. Drag assumes that people experience femininity and masculinity in the same way.
There's also an increasing kind of tension, a really productive tension between drag king as a performance genre and the type of lived experiences of masculinity that our trans friends and other gender diverse people are starting to experience in our communities, which means that perhaps watching drag kings perform on stage as a form of comedy was less viable and less interesting to those trans and gender diverse people who have different sets of investments in masculinity.
However, Joan believes drag is an important platform for transgender and gender fluid individuals to test the waters before making a committed change.
I actually know quite a few drag performers who used to do drag king performances and now have transitioned.
Liz Stokes, a data librarian at UTS and a former drag king, gave up the hobby to focus on her family and raising a child.
Doing late night performances, which is what I would often be doing, the performance time could be 10 o'clock at night is an early performance, or you might be doing a 12 o'clock performance or a 2 a.m. performance. And that is just not sustainable when you have small children.
Liz also supposes that the increase in transgender people in the queer community has contributed to the decline of drag king performances.
And for me, sometimes it wasn't appropriate to just make simple divisions between dressing up as a man. You ask yourself, what do all these things mean?
An event coordinated by Heaps Gay at Carriageworks on Thursday, June 1st, brought the lesbian and queer community together. 4 females performed different interpretations of what they perceived a drag king on the night. This event may bring hope for Sydney's drag king scene as spectators applauded the performers with excitement. We may see drag transform in a way that engages gender as a spectrum rather than 2 divisions.
I don't know whether it'll come back in one form or another. It may do. It might have a different form of drag king culture that is much more inclusive of sort of those, as I said, those trans tensions or gender diverse tensions that might exist.
Laine Fullerton, clocking off.